I bought Mary Ruddick's 99 USD book, Reigns Dysautonomia, and it's a nutritional protocol for supposedly helping your body to regenerate the nerves. Was it worth it? That's what this video is going to be about, and I just wanted to share my thoughts. Firstly, I'm determined to give the diet a go. I'm disabled by my POTS. It's been really crippling. My husband's been helping care for me and it's been awful. I do have my reservations about having purchased the book and I don't know if it's going to work in the long term, so I'm going to break down my reasoning for you in case you're interested in buying it or trying it yourself. And if you want to see how it goes when I try it, just subscribe to the channel because I will be sharing the journey with this protocol as well as the Levine exercise regime, and I'll be sharing my progress and, you know, what works, what doesn't. We'll see how it all goes, hey? My first thoughts are that it's really weird how she doesn't offer refunds for a digital product. That really put me off purchasing it initially, but I thought, you know what? I don't really have much to lose. 99 USD in the scheme of things isn't that much. But it is odd, and it makes me wonder if perhaps there's a lot of people who buy it and are really dissatisfied with the product and ask for a refund. And usually it's worth it for the business's reputation to offer refunds if people really don't like it. So I found that a little bit strange, and it definitely put me off purchasing it. Having read the book, because it's not very big, it's packed with information, but it's not very big. It's 47 A4 pages. I feel comfortable saying it is a keto version of the GAPS diet with some modifications. She does have an extensive list of supplementation, which you don't get in the GAPS book, and it definitely seems dysautonomia focused, so it could be worth it just for the supplementation. The supplements she talks about sound really interesting and really promising in terms of being evidence-based. The biggest one she mentions is thiamine, which she talks about taking 8 tablets a day of, working your way up to. The reason I'm impressed by this is this bad boy. If hopefully you can see it. I haven't read all of this book. I read enough to get compelled by the evidence to go start taking thiamine supplementation myself. And this book is extensively cited in terms of all the references, massive bibliographies in it, and it's very evidence-based. It's by a doctor who spent, well, one of the doctors, I believe, Lawndale, spent his life researching this. And he specifically talks about POTS quite a bit. So the fact that she's leaned so heavily into thiamine suggests that she has done research, and a lot of the stuff she mentions as well aligns with what I've read in the GAPS book, which I'm very familiar with. I'm a big fan of Natasha's work. I have a lot of her work because I used to be deep into this stuff about a decade ago when I had a really bad form of gut dysbiosis as a teenager, and I got very deep into it and did a very meat-based version of the GAPS diet for 5 years and cured myself of all of my issues. The irony is now having come down with POTS during my second pregnancy, but we'll see if we can get on top of that, hey? I'm sure all of us would prefer not to have POTS. Now, she leans a lot into the work of the Weston A. Price Foundation as well. I know a lot about the Weston A. Price Foundation. I used to be in deep with them as well when I was younger. I have the classic, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, and I have a whole heck of books that Sally Fallon is responsible for. Now, take anything from the Weston A. Price Foundation with lots of grains of salt, in my opinion, because they have some really crazy stuff on their website, and they discredit themselves because of it. What do I mean? There was one doctor, I believe it was Dr. something Cowan, who had articles on the website talking about monoatomic gold. Another thing she specifically mentions, which concerns me, having read Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, again, it was a decade ago, but I've read it. She mentions in her book that ketosis is perfectly healthy for anyone to do, and it was the traditional way primitive societies ate. Now, reading Weston A. Price's research, that's not true. That's simply not true. And I'm kind of confused as to why she said it. Maybe she knows something I don't. A lot of primitive societies ate grains and carbs and starches, but the thing that they did differently was that they prepared them the right way. I think her statement that keto is the traditional diet of most societies is false and I'm a little bit concerned by it, especially given some of the other red flags that we've seen. Now, in terms of all the supplements she recommends, I think that's going to be very, very expensive to do. However, if it can actually encourage the body to regrow or heal the nerves that are damaged, it's obviously worth it, because it is going to be cheaper than taking, I believe, fludrocortisone or midodrine or other heart medications for the rest of your life. So I'm all down for taking supplements that might cost, goodness, probably hundreds of dollars for a couple of years, or depending on how long this protocol lasts. And that takes me to another point. I don't know how long this protocol is meant to last for, because it wasn't clear to me in the book. Now, I read it very quickly, maybe I missed something. However, she talks about a stage 1 and a stage 2. Stage 1 definitely lasts for 30 days. Stage 2, I don't know how long that lasts for. It wasn't clear. It doesn't make it clear if stage 2 of her diet is only until the nerves are healed, or if it's indefinitely. I wish I could ask her questions about this, but I can't. It costs $125 USD to send her a text message and get a response. And that also seems a little bit like a red flag. It may not be. She talks about using people who work for her business, what's it called? Enable Your Healing. You can have one of the coaches at Enable Your Healing help walk you through the diet, which, that sounds fair. I do know in the interview she mentioned she used to see 60 patients per week in a brick and mortar building before she took her business digital, and now she's busy documenting blue zones and remote tribes while she can before they go away. That sounds like noble work. Maybe she's really short on time. This is the price she puts on her time. That could be reasonable, but it could also be snake oilsy. Now, her documentation doesn't have sources, which is bad. It's not good, especially given all the red flags about possibly being a snake oil salesman. And it's possible that she's targeting people like me who want to be hopeful, who are open-minded, and she doesn't have time to put the links in for her sources, which could very well be the case with me as well. I don't know how many sources I'm going to be able to put in my videos. I'm incredibly short on time. However, I'm also not charging 99 USD for a 47-page document. So I think the price point here matters when you're not going to include sources or citations for your points. Most of the stuff I'm familiar with, such as the GAPS protocol and the thiamine, because the thiamine is very evidence-based. Personally, I don't regret my purchase thus far, but these, you know, I want to just be honest. It's a lot of money. A lot of what she mentions also, Dr. Natasha's work talks about, and Dr. Natasha, if you're not familiar with her work, she has references to the heavens. Some of the stuff Mary has included in her PDF does sound crazy, and to my knowledge could very well be unfounded and not have a scientific basis. Some of the things she mentions is not listening to modern music, only listen to classical music. This could be plausible. This could be plausible. We know studies have proven that music changes the way you feel, emphasizes existing feelings, and can cause you to feel new emotions based on the sounds involved. Listen to a happy song, get happy. Listen to a sad song, get angry, that kind of thing. And we know that feelings are very, very closely linked to hormones, and hormones seem to play a big part in at least POTS and dysautonomias, and they could very well be linked to hindering or assisting in the healing of dysautonomias and nerve problems, nerve damage. So, you know, I don't want to be too skeptical. At the same time, it comes across as very far-fetched. Another thing she mentions is only breathing in through your left nostril for a couple of minutes before you eat to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, I haven't heard of this anywhere, and I asked GPT about it. GPT suggested it could be a Indian Ayurvedic thing, not necessarily. It didn't think it was founded in any science. I don't have the time to actually Google it, so let me know if this is actually a scientifically documented thing. I don't know, but for me that struck me as very odd. There was another thing, let me just check my notes. The other thing she mentioned is some lifestyle changes, including spending, I think it was 30 minutes a day coloring with your left hand to help with nerve regeneration and stuff. I'm trying to be open-minded about this. It just comes across as very bohemian, and for me it's definitely a turnoff, especially when there aren't citations to such seemingly very out there claims. But again, desperate to try get rid of POTS, so I'm open to trying things. We'll see what we can manage. So overall, I want to give the benefit of the doubt in terms of mixing and matching stuff that I know seems to be, from what I've read, is evidence-based, and then the other stuff like what I've mentioned, which is pretty far-fetched. Because it could well be that, like myself, she tried a bunch of stuff, had a very shotgun, scattergun approach, and then didn't know exactly what worked and what didn't, so then she's continued it in her advice for other people. The diet and daily lifestyle requirements don't seem realistic with kids or anyone with more than a part-time job. Now, I know a lot of us disabled by this condition, that's reasonable, but it's tough because for me, even though I've got a disability, I still have my responsibilities to my kids, and I'm not going to put any more burden on my husband than I have to, especially for something that sounds like possibly dubious benefits in terms of daily cold showers. Now, at the moment, I'm lucky if I can have a shower every 2 days, and that's way more showers than I've been having previously as a mother. She talks about the 30 minutes coloring left-handed. She talks about 20-minute Epsom salt bath at the end of the day. She talks about spending 60 minutes meditating for a day. She talks about gratitude journaling and mentioning specifically that you have to spend the time journaling because in the studies where they didn't write it down, people didn't get the benefits from it. What else? Making lists of what you achieved in the day. Listening to 20 minutes of a podcast from someone who talks about building resilience. Now, I'm all down for building resilience. I have a book, fantastic book by Viktor E. Frankl on the bookshelf back there, Man's Search for Meaning. And she specifically does talk about listening to people like Holocaust survivors and people who have gone through terrible, terrible ordeals, which I can attest to. I think, you know, she understands it. She's been here in the trenches with us, with POTS, and her specifically having had chronic nerve pain, which pain medications don't stop, and for her sounded a lot like torture. That's horrible. Absolutely go and dig into the trench. Advice from other people who have been in terrible, terrible situations and find what gives you the strength to continue. But it may not be realistic for me. I may not be able to actually fully achieve this. And again, that ties back into some of the snake oil red flags because there's a few little catch-alls that I'll talk about later on that may actually kind of cover her in terms of, well, you just didn't try it hard enough, which is why you haven't gotten results, rather than it being necessarily a scientifically plausible dietary protocol and lifestyle modifying protocol. Okay, another thing is that I'm disregarding her exercise advice straight off the bat because it seems less founded than the Levine Protocol, which I am doing. I will be doing the Levine Protocol instead, and that is already a huge, huge time commitment for me and my husband. Another thing is that the diet is expensive. You're eating a lot of unprocessed whole foods, and it will be expensive unless you can find a way to grow it yourself. She doesn't mention at all sleeping with the head of your bed raised to support blood volume expansion, which is something that the medical journal I often reference, which is non-pharmacological treatments for POTS, that mentions. And it's important because it's sort of a natural alternative to taking fludrocortisone, I think it is, fludrocortisone, which was a synthetic replacement for low levels of aldosterone, I think. I could be wrong, I'm sorry if I'm butchering the words. She also does an interesting thing where she breaks the GAPS protocol by suggesting the use of adding vegetable scraps to stocks or soups at the end to add flavoring. The reason why the GAPS protocol doesn't do this, and it's been a decade since I read it, but my understanding was that vegetable scraps, the parts that you wouldn't normally eat, were often not eaten for good reason, and they taste bad for good reason because anti-nutrients. And if you're trying to heal a delicate gut lining, you don't want to be introducing more anti-nutrients into what could already be a very high toxic load on the body from having mal-digested food particulates and toxins created by pathogenic or opportunistic microbes going through the gut barrier into the blood and possibly crossing the blood-brain barrier. So that's a little bit strange that she recommends that. I'm not certain that is necessarily a good thing to do. I personally will not be adding vegetable scraps to my stocks to add flavoring. This book, this PDF that you get a digital copy of, that's $99 that you couldn't possibly refund, I feel like she's totally put it at the wrong price point. Now, if it was $30, I think that would be the right price point to not really nitpick it as much, but yeah, 99 USD is a lot. It is a lot. So I'm hoping once the nerves are healed, I can just go on and eat a normal diet. That would be wonderful if they can heal. Another red flag potentially is that this woman is still on the keto diet to my knowledge. Now maybe she believes it's the best diet in the world, or maybe it's still keeping her symptoms in remission. Now I've been conservative with my channel. It's about trying to get POTS into remission. I'm happy if that's all I manage to do. I don't know if there is an actual cure that gets rid of it. I don't know if that's reasonable to expect, but if it's keeping her symptoms in remission, then obviously I would love to be in remission as well. Having said all of this as well, there is a chance that Mary just grew out of POTS, because she was, as I understand it from the interview, she was a girl when it happened. Pediatric POTS has a chance of going away spontaneously. A lot of people with it grow out of it. I can't remember this percentage. Try edit it into the video with some text. But my impression was it was a relatively large percent. And I was a little bit bitter that adult POTS doesn't have the same percentage of randomly growing out of it as childhood POTS does. So it could be that she tried all of this stuff and in the end she just grew out of it. There is a chance of that. I hope that's not the case, because again, I am on board for trying this protocol of diet and lifestyle changes, but there's a chance of that. In terms of the snake oil vibes as well, her diet and lifestyle protocols include things like don't have negative thoughts. This could be true in terms of healing. We do know that, you know, mood, hormones, very, very interconnected with how our bodies function. I mean, people talk about if you lose a loved one, you have a much higher risk of dying of a heart attack. Mary has the catch-all that even if you do all the objective measurements properly and your nerves still don't heal, she could say, well, you just had too many negative thoughts. But fundamentally, my conclusion is that I need to think on this more. I'm going to think of what I can realistically do with the kids and my lifestyle without putting more of a burden on my husband, because my priority is the Levine Protocol. And I'm down to make the dietary changes from this Reigns Dysautonomia diet, but I'm not sure about the lifestyle changes, especially when they're a little bit more out there in terms of the bohemian vibes they give off. The good news is that if my POTS does go into remission after trying this and the Levine Protocol, I've got what I think is a good enough measure to tell which one worked, and that is that I have a permanent numb patch on my thigh from where I had my epidural done during the first labor with my first child. So that's definitely permanent nerve damage. It has not gone away. Thankfully it's not pain. I'm very thankful it's not pain, but it's permanently numb. I can't feel it very well at all. If that goes away, we know it's not the Levine Protocol, because the Levine Protocol only enlarges your heart and increases the leg muscles so that they handle blood return back to the heart better. Now, for anyone else, if you want to see how it goes, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to try my best to document the journey and see what works and what doesn't. Hopefully we can get POTS into remission without having to spend the rest of my life on medication. Okay, thank you for watching. Hope you find it helpful.